Today, we're talking about circus freaks. Most known for their sideshow roles in the late 1800s and early 1900s, we don't think about them much today, yet they still shape much of our entertainment industry. From Andre the Giant to Peter Dinklage, it's clear we're still drawn to people who look different. As American Horror Story Freak Show reveals, these individuals are often viewed as curiosities, not equals. For many, that label turns into a lifelong barrier. So join us as we pull back the curtain on the 15 most amazing circus freaks that actually existed. Number 15. The Elephant Skin Man. Ralph Albert Kruner was born in 1888 in Montpellier, and people never stopped staring. His skin thickened early in life, forming heavy folds over his hands, knees, and arms, rough as leather and tough as hide. They called him the Elephant Skin Man, and for years, he lived between doctors' theories and carnival myths. Some blamed pachydermoperiostosis, others said ichthyosis. But showmen spun tales of his mother witnessing an elephant stampede while pregnant. Trauma made flesh. Ralph ignored it all. He made a living on his own terms, traveling the fair circuit and posing in dime museums, always with a tired grin and no apologies. He wasn't rich. He wasn't trying to be. He booked his own appearances, took his pay in cash, and kept control over what they saw. When he died in 1952, legends replaced facts. But what mattered most stayed true. Ralph turned the skin that marked him into the armor that let him survive. Number 14. The Child with a Twin Inside. Catherine Virginia McDonald carried something no child ever should, an underdeveloped parasitic twin inside her chest. Her parents, kind and ordinary, tried to give her a peaceful life, shielding her from stares and whispers. But Catherine's health was fragile. The twin caused breathing issues and placed constant stress on her immune system. In an era without reliable surgery, there was little doctors could do. Just after her 5th birthday, she caught a bad case of tonsillitis and bronchitis. Her body, already exhausted, couldn't fight back. She passed away on December 29, 1915. Her life was short, and she never saw the circus stage. Still, her name surfaced in old medical journals and sideshow records, a strange, tragic figure preserved in footnotes. Catherine didn't become a performer, but she became something else. A haunting reminder of how rare, heartbreaking, and unforgettable some lives truly are, no matter how brief they last. Number 13. Ernie DeFort. Ernie DeFort was born on July 7, 1931, and the world gave him a second name before he ever spoke. They called him Ernie Len, the world's strangest living boy. His parasitic twin, who was named Len, grew from his chest, silent but always there. Carnival banners featured him. Small-town newspapers ran his story. In 1943, surgeons removed Len. Doctors called it a medical triumph. Ernie just called it survival. He lived through it, but not without cost. The world never let him forget. Even after the spotlight faded, stories trailed him, of a man who grew up, married, and quietly disappeared into the Midwest. Whether he's still alive, no one knows. What's left are photographs, old medical charts, and fading headlines, but almost nothing in his own voice. Maybe that silence was the point. For once, Ernie got to decide who looked, who listened, and who never knew him at all. A strange boy, yes, but finally, one with privacy. Number 12. The Glamazon. Barbara LeMay, better known as the Glamazon, lit up the underground long before the world knew what to do with someone like her. Born in Los Angeles, she began performing in the 1960s and 70s, gracing burlesque shows, carnivals, and fringe clubs with an unapologetic mix of elegance and defiance. She was transgender, tattooed, bold, and unforgettable. Her presence challenged everything. In 1975, film student Daniel D. Tioli Jr. captured her in a short documentary, Gone Up in Smoke. The school called it too indecent to screen, but Barbara didn't need permission. Her art, like her life, refused to be erased. Decades later, the film resurfaced, showing her signature hoochie show performance, funny, raw, and mesmerizing. She lived in a time that tried to ignore people like her, yet made her impossible to forget. She didn't chase approval. She carved out space and claimed it. Tattooed skin, confident voice. Every move she made said the same thing. I exist. Deal with it. Number 11. Dolly Dutton. Dolly stood just over 3 feet tall, but walked through life with full-sized strength. Billed as the Little Fairy, she performed with her sister Etta across New England, singing and reciting until Etta died at 8, leaving Dolly alone on stage. She kept performing, but also taught school, splitting her life between glitter and chalkboards. In 1882, she was quietly admitted to an asylum for domestic troubles, a cold phrase hiding the truth. She died there in 1890, aged 38. Sideshow posters remembered her sequined dresses. Her students remembered her patience and wit. The circus loved her size. The classroom loved her mind. Dolly didn't want pity. She never chased fame. She simply wanted the room to be both performer and person. And somehow, even in a world that insisted on shrinking her down, she pulled it off. She wasn't small where it counted, and that's exactly how she should be remembered. She was a real legend. Number 10. The Spotted Negro Boy. They called him beautiful, but no matter what, they never let him be a child. George Alexander Grattan was born on the island of St. Vincent, his body marked by piebaldism, white streaks across dark skin, like nature had painted him mid-thought. He was taken from his mother at birth by a plantation overseer, given a name that wasn't hers to give. At just 15 months, he was put on a ship and sold in England to a showman. He became property, a child in costume, paraded for curious stares. They baptized him, dressed him up, and called him exotic, but never called him free. His skin earned money for others, while his small frame endured exhaustion and strangers' hands. George died at only 4 years old. They gave him a private grave, but it was far from home. No family, no quiet childhood, just rest after a short life spent on display. The world watched him constantly. In death, he was finally unseen, and this rule is the same for all. Number 9. The Wild Spotted Boy. Mungo Lark toured under a name he never chose, the Wild Spotted Boy. However, the truth was way simpler. He had vitiligo, a skin condition that disrupted pigment. But the story sold to crowds was fiction. Barkers claimed he was from a wild tribe of spotted Africans, raised in the jungle and captured for the stage. Posters sold the lie. People believed it. Mungo's skin was real, but everything else was spectacle. He wasn't wild. He wasn't tribal. He was a young man trying to live in a world that punished difference by turning it into performance. There's little left about his personal life, only photographs, sideshow flyers, and scattered mentions. But even through the distortion, his body told its own truth. It didn't need a made-up past or mythic origin to matter. Mungo Lark's skin wasn't exotic. It was his. And long after the lights faded and the jungle stories were forgotten, that truth still stands, quiet but unshakable. Number 8. Lothar Geyer. Lothar didn't need flames or freakishness to command a crowd. A tuxedo, a bicycle, and silence were enough. Born in Germany, he later joined a precision stunt cycling troupe in the US. 7 riders on one frame, moving like a single machine. He didn't shout, he didn't joke, he balanced. When one rider quit, a young Englishwoman named Jill Goading stepped in. Their partnership wasn't just professional. They fell in love, married, and performed together, gliding through rehearsals in sync. Eventually, Lothar left the troupe to perfect a solo act, the one-finger stand. No wires, no illusions, just brutal control and aching stillness. He'd hold his body suspended, all weight on one finger, tuxedo pressed and expression locked. Years later, he walked away from the spotlight and opened a fishing charter in Florida. No more costumes, no crowds. But he never really stopped performing. Whether on stage or sea, Lothar lived boldly. Number 7. The Man Turning to Stone. Charles S. Porter was born in New Haven in 1900. At 30, something began to change. Muscles stiffened, movement strained. Doctors diagnosed him with fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, an ultra-rare condition where soft tissue gradually ossifies into bone. He was literally turning to stone. Most people would have disappeared from view. Charles went the other way. He joined the carnival circuit, billing himself as the man turning to stone. He didn't do tricks. He didn't move much at all. He just sat, letting people see what time was doing to his body. There's something raw in that kind of stillness, when the freak show doesn't perform, but simply endures. He wasn't just a medical exhibit. He was a man slowly freezing from the inside out, turning pain into presence. At some point, his name vanished from sideshow records. But the image stayed. A man in a chair, solidifying day by day, until there was no more of him left to move. Number 6. The Hottentot Venus. Sartji Sarah Bartman was born in South Africa and taken to Europe under the false promise of fame. Instead, she became an exhibit. Labeled the Hottentot Venus, she was paraded across 19th-century freak shows and private salons, her body gawked at in the name of science, lust, and curiosity. Europeans fixated on her anatomy, objectifying her features as proof of racial stereotypes. She was displayed like an animal, sometimes caged, often prodded. There was no dignity, only exploitation. She died in France at age 25. Even in death, she wasn't left alone. Her remains were dissected and displayed in museums. It wasn't until 2002, after years of protest, that her body was finally returned home and buried in South Africa on Women's Day. Nelson Mandela personally requested her repatriation. Sarah Bartman never had a chance to define her own story while she lived, but in the end, her country gave her what the world denied: a name, a voice, and a place to rest. All right, guys, now let's head over to Number 5. The Wild Men of Borneo. The truth was quiet, but the story roared. Hiram and Barney Davis were brothers, each weighing under 45 pounds, born with cognitive disabilities yet strong enough to hoist full-grown men overhead. That should have been enough. But when Barnum found them, he gave them new names, Waino and Plutonor, and a false history. Feral brothers captured in the jungles of Borneo. He dressed them in scraps, had them grunt and growl, and watched the public line up in awe. People believed it. They paid thousands to see the wild men. The brothers became rich by sideshow standards, earning Barnum over $200,000, an enormous sum for the era. As they aged, their sight dimmed, but the illusion held. Even after they died in their 90s, newspapers clung to the fiction. Wild Man of Borneo dies, one headline read. No mention of Ohio or their real lives. Their final chapter closed the same way it began, a lifelong act that never once asked for truth. Number 4. The 48-Pound Man. Martin P. Avery was born on August 18, 1836, and weighed just 48 pounds as an adult. He stood 5 feet 3 inches tall but never reached 50 pounds, making him one of the thinnest men recorded. He lived in New York and endured chronic dyspepsia, a long-term digestive disorder that made eating painful and kept him frail. Despite his condition, he married, lived independently, and tried to maintain a modest life away from spectacle. In an age where extreme bodies often led to sideshow exploitation, Martin resisted that path. He wasn't a performer or an exhibit. He was a man trying to exist within a body that betrayed him daily. On July 16, 1882, he died from complications of his illness and pancreatitis. He was buried in Moravian Cemetery in New York. His body may have been small and fragile, but his will to live within it never bent. Martin P. Avery wasn't a curiosity. He was a man who endured. Number 3. Rita and Christina Parodi. They arrived in the world not as two, but as one. Sisters joined at the chest, breathing the same air and fate. Born in Sassari, Italy, to a mother already raising 8 children, Rita and Christina were quickly ushered into public curiosity. Christina was the stronger twin. Rita was fragile and frequently ill. Their parents brought them through Italy, eventually to Paris, where they were named l'enfant bicéphale, the two-headed child. Public exhibitions were banned due to their age, but behind closed doors, doctors and journalists paid for a glimpse. The twins were kept in poor conditions, sleeping on straw, paraded for science rather than sympathy. In 1829, Rita succumbed to bronchitis. Moments later, Christina followed with a final cry, as if her soul knew she couldn't carry their shared life alone. Their bodies were dissected, organs mapped, and skeletons preserved in a museum. Yet that last moment, one life ending and another instantly breaking, remains the only part of their story not stolen. Number 2. Captain Fred Walters. Fred was a soldier before he became a spectacle. He polished his boots, pressed his uniform, and obeyed orders without complaint. When an army doctor prescribed a nerve treatment containing silver, Fred followed the instructions. Slowly, his skin changed, turning blue, then darker, until the color wouldn't fade. By 1891, with no other options, he crossed the Atlantic and joined the American freak show circuit. The blue man on stage was still the disciplined soldier underneath, but the audience never saw that. They pointed, whispered, and laughed while the silver continued poisoning him silently. For more than 30 years he toured, his skin darkening, his body weakening. The stage became his only home. In 1923, the silver reached his heart, and he died far from Britain, known only by the name pinned to his skin. Some called it art, some called it a tragedy. For Fred Walters, it was simply survival inside a body no one else could understand. Number 1. Sophia Schultz. Sophia Schultz stood out in a world that measured worth by spectacle, not extremes. Billed as a triple curiosity, a little person, a bearded lady, and a fat lady, only one part truly belonged to her. She had dwarf stature, yes, but her faint goatee and modest frame hardly matched the wild posters promising a marvel. Yet Sophia kept showing up, traveling the dime museum circuit of the 1880s from New York to Boston to Baltimore, selling novelty instead of shock. In every faded photograph, you can sense both determination and exhaustion. A performer reshaping herself into whatever the crowd would pay to see. Modern speculation hints she may have suffered from hypothyroidism, which can blunt growth and alter appearance, but it's impossible to know. What's certain is that Sophia lived inside a system that rewarded difference, however small, and turned it into currency. She wasn't famous, but she was brave. Sophia Schultz turned being underestimated into her own quiet form of defiance. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you very soon.